Alright, welcome to Operation End Times. I'm Ben Ellisted, your Jedi warrior for Jesus. Today we are doing part 6 of the Just Living series. Are you just married, or is it just a mirage, is our topic. And hopefully this is going to be the final video in this series and we can kind of wrap everything up. Hopefully. So, man, we've come a long ways, and, the focus was just living, and we asked the question in the first video or so, are you just living, or are you living just? Are you just living day to day with no purpose? And that's kind of like being the fool. The word folly, is doing something for no purpose. And also, it's a form of the word free, or freely. God, I'm hoping not to get too distracted, but yeah, it's the Hebrew word chanam. Hebrew, it's 2500, I think. Means freely, for nothing, in vain, for no purpose. So, you could be living just day to day. You could be living just for yourself. All those would be probably not the way to be living. Or you could be living justly, a righteous life, where you're walking the path that God lays out for you. So you're just living for God, for the kingdom, to please the Father, to be worthy, to do His will. And what we discussed was that if you're not doing the Father's will, then you're considered an adversary or an enemy. So we're living in a time, 2013, where there's the dark side, the dark kingdom, and the light side, God's side, the kingdom of God and the sons and children of God, versus the shadow side, the dark side, Satan's side, the children of Anak, the children of disobedience. And it's kind of it's a choice. It's a free will, the free will equation. There's a saying I once heard. It was actually, when I was married. And my marriage, unfortunately, ended in divorce. And I had a hard time with it, and I've discussed that in the first couple of videos. But there was a saying, which was, if you love something, set it free. And that's kind of a realization that I had to come to, that it didn't matter how much I loved my ex-wife, I'd just set her free and let her follow her own path, or the path that was being laid out before her. And that path no longer included me. But, that's part of our walk on the straight and narrow, preparing ourselves, preparing the way for the kingdom of God and for the return of God on earth. Is preparing ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. I showed this one diagram right here, and we're gonna look at it a little bit more. But this is kind of like the path of life, where you start in the abyss, the hole, and you progress upward, and you eventually cross over and crash the beach. And we'll get to that, because we're gonna, that's why I'm trying to wrap up this series, because I want to start a new series, MINDFAST, or for some, MINDFEST. If you're mind fasting, that means you're standing fast, holding fast to the truth, the Word of God, and your faith. And if you're a MINDFAST, that's like a fest of evil or festering evil, MINDFAST. So you get, what's in your head, what's going on. That's going to be part of MINDFAST, but I want to get into that because we're going to try and cross over and do some mind fasting on August 11th, which is right around the corner. But in the kingdom of God, God gave us the free will equation because he totally believes God is love, and love is freedom. If you love something, set it free. And God set us free. Jesus came back to earth for the first time and lived the perfect life to set us free again, But, we're not automatrons, robots. We have a choice of whether we want to love God and follow God's will or not. And, when you look in the Bible, free is mentioned 59 times, and there's a couple different words for it. And freely is mentioned a bunch of times. It's mentioned 17 times. Like one of the first times you hear of freely is in Genesis 2 verses 16, and we're going to go back into the book of Genesis and look at some really crazy stuff, but that's when God said, you may freely eat of all the trees in the garden, except for 2 trees. But freely means to eat, consume, devour. And, that's part of this final Just Living segment is, you need to have walked far enough along your path with God, towards God, to where your mind, your eyes are opened, and your ears can hear, and your mind can comprehend. And you're not thinking purely on a fleshly, carnal level. Because if you are, none of this going to make sense to you. Because what we're going to talk about is, we're definitely going to talk about carnal things, but we're also going to talk about spiritual things. But if your mind is locked in a carnal state, then when we talk about the spiritual stuff, like trees are spiritual. Trees represent spirits, people, emotions, qualities, strength, flexibility. Also animals, represent things. The serpent, the beast, the fowls of the air, the beasts of the field, cattle, all symbolic of things. Either people, women, men, angels, etc. But if every time we use these words, you're thinking in a box, limited thinking, then none of this is going to make sense to you. And you're going to have to backtrack and, try and expand your mind and then come back here and understand where we're going with all this. But, free. Salvation is free. God, his whole relationship with mankind was to give us free will. And that's one of the hardest things to understand, because the carnal mind, the way humans work here on earth, freedom is rare, in America, we're blessed. We used to live in the land of the free. I don't know if it's free anymore. But, man and Satan, they set up pyramids of power. They enslave. They put you into bondage. They bind you up. They tie you up, and enslave you. So, you kind of have a choice whether you're going to follow the light, the path that God sets out for you towards true freedom, or whether you're going to shackle yourself into a shadow, into the abyss, into bondage. And, that's kind of where this whole concept of marriage started coming into play. There is physical, carnal marriage, 2 people getting married, a man and a woman. And nowadays it could be 2 men or 2 women, but, gays and homosexuals and lesbians, they fought really hard to get their marriage rights under the law. And there's a lot of brothers and sisters talking about the law, the law, the law. Well, the law delivered the rights to gays in marriage, you know. And marriage, the carnal portion of marriage, is the law, which establishes rights. And there's also rules and laws about how to divorce or put away somebody, you know. And it's usually it's talking about putting away the woman. So, we're going to try and go all the way back to the beginning and kind of remulch this through our minds. You know, it was in part 1 or 2, I distinctly showed, you know, there's this saying, as above, so below, as in heaven. You know, we say, our Father who art in heaven, let thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I brought up, hey, is there marriage in heaven? And it appears there really isn't. At least not between the body, you know, brothers and sisters. There is a marriage, spiritual marriage, which is between God and the individual person. You know, they're spiritually wed. And that is what happened way back in the past, is the marriage fell apart. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But, you know, there's also a dark side to a spiritual marriage, where you're marrying yourself to Satan, where you're living in the carnal, the lust world. You're living to earn money, to accumulate a pile of treasure. You're living for sex, you know, for self-gratification. You know, that's all part of the dark side of being married to the carnal flesh mind. And we're going to talk about that. But, you know, under being free, there's the word chafesh, Hebrews 26:67, saddled. You know, Jesus is riding you. You know, that's the spiritual marriage. You know, there's also the root of that. I told you there was chinam, which is 2,500. The root of that is chen, which is grace, charm, acceptance. Chanan, 2603, gracious, pity, mercy. Those are all the beautiful qualities of God. Now, if you're loving somebody and you're showing all those qualities, then you're on the lighter side of a marriage. But I will tell you, my friends, you know, if you truly love somebody, you don't actually need to get married. Now, I went and got married. I did, you know, but if you truly love somebody, you don't. Now, when my marriage fell apart, there was a dark side and I fell into an abyss. But, you know, my divorce, you know, I loved my wife, and even though we were splitting up, she loved me. So even though we didn't need any lawyers, you know, to dissolve our marriage, you know, the carnal law part of marriage, you know, because we loved each other. So we just worked it out, you know, and I gave her whatever she wanted. And, you know, we didn't have to get into writing up a bill of divorce, you know. And it's funny, man, because, you know, a lot of brothers and sisters out there talk, you know, they hate the Bible and they bash the Bible, saying God would never write anything down, you know. But in the book of Jeremiah, 3 verse 8, it says, "And I saw, when for all the causes whereby the backsliding Israel committed adultery," and that's the spiritual Israel, which is the body of believers, "I had put her away and given her a bill of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah feared not, but went and played the harlot also." Now, a bill is Hebrew. It is the Hebrew word sefer, 56:12, a document in writing. You know, so there's a verse in Jeremiah where it's talking about God divorcing Israel with a bill, something in writing. You know, I'm thinking that's scriptures, you know, or it's a heavenly book, you know. But all this that God or Jesus would never write anything, no. That, you know, once again, you're walking in a shadow path, you know. But what's interesting here is the word divorce is only mentioned once in the Bible. And it is that verse, Jeremiah 3 verse 8, where it's God saying to the backsliding Israel, I am divorcing you, and here's the divorce papers. It's a Hebrew word, keri yithwath, 3748. The root is karath. Sounds like wrath, the wrath of God. Being cut off, failing, being destroyed, perishing. So you really don't want to be divorced from God. You know, it's death. But that word's only mentioned once. Divorce. Now, a phrase that's used a whole bunch is put her away. You know, shalak, Hebrew word 7971, to send away, to let go, to let loose. Almost sounds like Shylock. I was going to look up what Shylock means. Probably somebody who cheats on or has sex with a lot of women. You know, I'm guessing, but I'll look that up. We'll see how close I come. But another word for put away is Hebrew word 1644, garash, which almost looks like garbage. But it says to toss out, to drive out. And it's always talking about the woman, you know. And, you know, that's an ugly truth we got to face up to, is marriage, you know, especially how it has been on the planet for thousands of years, has this huge dark side to it, you know. And it's the bent woman, the bonds woman, you know. And that's negative. But I'll just touch on a verse. This is Galatians in the New Testament. I'm going to try and loop back and get to where I wanted to be at here. But Galatians 3:28. This is the Apostle Paul talking. But he says, there is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female. Ye are all one in Christ Jesus. So once again, on a spiritual level, we're all one, and there's no marrying between us. You know, we're married to God, the bride of Christ. But what's kind of interesting is if you go to the very next chapter, Galatians 4. It talks once again but when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that are under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because ye are sons, God hath sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Wherefore thou art no more a servant. We're not the bondsman anymore, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of God through Christ. Howbeit, then, when ye knew not God, ye did service unto them which by nature are no gods, the false gods, you know. But basically, what it's talking about there, it gets to this one part. It's talking about the law again. It goes, tell me, ye that desire to be under the law? And there's a lot of brothers and sisters out there where it's like, well, you know, we got to obey the Ten Commandments. You know, yeah, you do, but that's not what it's about anymore. Just living is not about trying to obey the Ten Commandments, you know. No, that's not just living. That's a fool, you know. But if you have the Christ head on, you will not be committing any sins. But if that's all your life is, if that's just how you're living your life, where you can say every day, hey, I didn't sin, you're lost. You're still going to be damned, you know. But it says, for it is written, Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondsmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondswoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman by promise. And once again, it's an allegory, but Agar was the bondswoman of Abraham, who bore him a son. And it says, for Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. And the reason why that all means something is because it's the bent woman. Jesus healed the bent woman who had been in infirmity for 18 years. And You know, when you look at marriage, it's all about being bonded, tying the knot, chained up, you know, especially for the woman, you know, for better or for worse, you know. You know, another word for to put her away is the Greek word 863, aphemi. The root of it is apo, which is the fellowship of two, like an apostle. You know, the apostles of Jesus. That's why some people say only the inner 12 were actual apostles. Why? Because they actually were with Jesus. But I would say the ring goes farther because it's on a spiritual level. If you're wedded up and walking with God, you're an apostle, apo. But it's also from the root apollio, Greek word 630, which also means to put her away, to set free, to release, to let go, to acquit, which almost is a good thing, you know. And then the root of that word, and you know what's funny is apollio means to set free, release, to let go, but Apollyon is the angel that comes down with the keys to hell. The root is Leo, which sounds like Leo, to loose. Those who are tied are bound up. But that's all putting her away, that phrase, putting her away. You know, another thing that's kind of interesting is divorce, you know, is the Hebrew word 3748, and the root is 3772, but 3737. Folly is found 37 times in the Bible, you know, and it's kind of like getting married is folly, you know, or fools fall in love, you know. You know, especially if you're hasty, impatient, you know. People that get married, don't think about it, just do it, right? But I was getting down to Galatians 4:26. It says, oh yeah, I've read that one, and 31. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondswoman, but of the free. And that's why I tell you there's two kingdoms, two types of marriages, a bondswoman and a free woman, a bride of Christ, a bride of Satan, Jezebel. So anyway, man, we bring it all back to Genesis. And actually before Genesis was the book of Enoch. But we'll go to Genesis. You know, Genesis 1, we hear about the creation of the world. Genesis 1:28 or 1:27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Now, a lot of people will tell you these mankind that he created here were both male and female, hermaphrodites, you know. I kind of think that that's how it was. Now, in Genesis 1, you know, this earth that was created, for one, there's a destruction, which is the very chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and then the earth was without form and void, so there was already destruction. So I think there's been these cycles of the planet where it's gotten corrupted and evil and been destroyed multiple times. But Genesis 1, he creates man again, and he says, replenish the earth. Not plenish it, replenish it, like it had been populated and now it isn't, so now repopulate it again. But before you multiply, be fruitful. Now, of course, mankind skipped right over the fruitful part and went straight on to multiplying, which, you know, that in and of itself is not a good thing. But anyway, in chapter 2, this is where it gets really interesting. What I was going to say is the earth back then, heaven and earth were together. You know, they hadn't really been separated out. God was walking on the planet. Angels were on the planet, you know. So the way we see the world now is not how this world was back then, you know. So if you, once again, if you keep looking through your own carnal mind, if you are in a box and you can't step outside of it and see the possibilities of unlimited potential that God brings to the table, you won't be able to understand this at all. But one, humans might have been slightly different, both male and female, you know. So then you get to chapter 2, and God made the garden, and he put Adam in the garden. And he said, hey, you can, there was all sorts of trees in there, and trees are people. spiritual people, maybe angels, I don't know. But it said right after he made the garden, and he put man who he had formed in it out of the ground. He made to grow every tree that is pleasant for sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And he said, hey, you can eat freely of any of those trees. And once again, trees are made of wood. You don't eat trees, they're not food, And I did a list of trees, that are listed in the Bible, and there are trees that you can eat. There's an almond tree, an apple tree, a fig tree, but there's an oak tree, a cedar tree, a fir tree, palm tree, pine tree, myrtle tree. A lot of these trees you can't actually eat, but God said you can eat of all of them. So he wasn't really talking about actually consuming food. Whatever they were doing, eating, I think it was experiencing stuff, emotions, thinking, knowledge, Like I said, the earth was different back then. But what's interesting is he made all these trees, told Adam he could eat freely of them all, but he said, don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and because when the day you do, you will surely die. And then God said in Genesis 2:18, God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. And I already did some videos on the lonely boy. And it's interesting. Why would Adam be alone? If there were no other humans, he wouldn't even know what it meant to have another human around. So there were other people, angels, Cro-Magnon humans, I don't know, man. But I would say that they were already practicing some form of carnal marriage, living together, and Adam could see that. But once again, I would say on a spiritual level, if you're walking in love, you don't need a carnal marriage, some law written by man. If you want to love somebody and be with them and commit to them, you just do it all mentally and spiritually. But Adam was alone, meaning he saw what other people were doing and he wanted that. So right there in Genesis 2:18, we see the slide of Adam. Most people think that the fall came when he ate the fruit. No, Adam began his slide way before then. And I think Adam was in the garden for, it could have been decades, years, who knows, because time was measured differently then. But then Genesis 2:19, the Lord God formed every beast of the field, every fowl of the air, and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. Now, a lot of people, I grew up where they told me, God brought all the animals and birds and bugs and elephants and rhinos to Adam, and he named them all. But no, that's not what's happening there. The beasts of the field, the fowls of the air, every living creature. Living creature, that word in Hebrew means soul, living soul. What's interesting is that he brought every beast of the field and every fowl of the air. And it says, and Adam gave names to all the cattle and to the fowl of the air. Cattle is a female word, bahima. And fowl is a male word, flying and shining. So I think it was like Adam gave names to all the females and to the men of the air and to every beast of the field. So what I actually think he was doing was assigning sex preferences to everybody. I know that sounds crazy, man, but Adam wasn't a normal guy. He was a lord himself. He had power and dominion over a lot of stuff. And the reason why I know this is what he was doing is because verse 20 says he gave names to all the cattle, to all the fowl of the air. And you're asking, why is God bringing all these things to Adam? And it's not animals, it's people. To name them. Because if it was animals, like, oh, that's a skunk, that's a rabbit, that's a turtle, there would be no purpose, because whatever language Adam was speaking, everybody speaks different languages, and there's like 20 names for every animal, every bird, so that makes no sense unless Adam was writing down all those names, and there's a book called the Book of Names by Adam. But we know that's not what was going on, because in verse 20, he gives names to them all. But in the same verse, it says, Adam gave names to all the cattle, to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helpmeet. And when you look up that word helpmeet, it means succor, or a hole pen. A hole for a penis, But that's what Adam was doing. He was looking for a physical partner that he could have carnal sex with, you know, and he didn't find somebody suitable enough. You know, all the people he designated, like, you're a guy, you're a chick, because there was all these hermaphroditic looking people, you know, but God at this point was saying, we're going to separate out the men and the women. But because Adam didn't find a helpmeet, that's when God caused deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he took one of his ribs. And then when he woke up, Adam said, this is the bone of my bones. And once again, Adam's pride and arrogance was coming into play here, his lording over this woman that was created for him. He says, this woman came out of me, and he even named her after him. She's a womb man because she came out of the womb of a man. And now a man will leave his father and his mother, like his God and the Holy Spirit, and will now worship his wife and be of one flesh. And they were both naked, and they were not ashamed. They were having sex. They were not ashamed about it. You know, all that is dark stuff, man. Nothing good is going on there. You know, Adam, under the free will equation, is deciding to follow a carnal path of marriage that already existed on the planet, and of sacred femininity. You know, once again, we looked in the book of Enoch, where all the fallen angels took unto themselves wives. They chose, each one chose one, and they began to defile themselves. And that's funny because, you know, marriage nowadays, you know, Hollywood, the mass media, they all try and shape our minds. You know, God's trying to shape our minds. You know, that's why MINDFAST is important, you know, to let yourself be molded by God and not by the shadow forces, you know, and Satan and Hollywood. But, you know, TV, movies, it's that concept. It's like, I can't wait till I get married because then I get to have sex all day long, you know, and I can do whatever I want as long as it's behind closed doors. Well, you know what? There's no such thing as closed doors with God, man. You know, whatever you're doing, even in the name of marriage, you know, you could be defiling yourself and committing fornication. You know, if that's all you're thinking about, if that's all marriage is to you, then that's a shadow path. But they defiled themselves. They taught them charms and enchantments, cutting of roots, made them acquainted with plants, and they became pregnant, had kids, you know, multiplied. And the kids were not good. They were giants, and they started consuming and devouring men. And when men could no longer sustain them, and this is all Book of Enoch, chapter 7, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind, and then they began to sin against the birds and the beasts and the reptiles. You know, once again, I think that's spiritual. You know, there could have been some genetic modification in there as well. Devour one another's flesh, drinking blood, the lawless ones, all through marriage. But what you find is in the previous chapter, you know, after the children of men had multiplied, they weren't bearing fruit. It says nothing about them bearing fruit. They had beautiful daughters, beautiful and ugly daughters, commonly. But the angels, they were lusting after the beautiful daughters, and they left their heavenly abode. So they committed this great sin, not only leaving their abode, but marrying human women. And they said, come, let us choose us wives and beget children. And the head angel was Semjaza. And then he said, hey, I need everybody to make a covenant, swear an oath to me. So they all, it was like 200 of them, they all swore. It was like a group marriage in a way, where they all married into the darkness, saying, we will follow you down this path, this great sin that you're about to do. Now, whether you want to believe it or not, you know, to this very day, that dark side has influenced the whole marriage concept, you know. Because after they swear it, they did it. Now, going back to chapter 7, you know, they taught them charms, eyeshadow, metallurgy, working with metals, bracelets, precious stones, the diamond, the wedding band, you know, weapons. Think of all the wars that have been started over marriages, you know, and a lot of times the kings and the nobility, the princes, they try and marry into each other's families to stop wars. But, you know, the Battle of Troy, you know, was over love and adultery and unfaithfulness, you know. But all these things in the book of Enoch in chapter 9, you know, that it's saying that the angels, the fallen angels, taught them, are all things that revolve marriages, or involved in the marriage ceremonies. Trying to pull up my screen here. There we go. Little technical difficulties. But after they taught them all this stuff, it says, there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication. Well, they were all married. How could they be fornicating? You know? They became corrupt in all their ways. And you know, my friends, marriage to this day, you know, when you get married, you know, the world paints a picture, builds a box, and says, now that you're married, this is what you got to do. You got to save up for the college fund. You got to get your 401k going. You got to get a house. Got to buy a car. Got to get insurance. All of it is sending you into bondage, slavery, you know, in the name of marriage. Now, final thing, you know, the woman, you know, she got like the worst part of the whole marriage. You know, the word deo is used. I don't know why I keep missing it in my notes, but that is Satan putting the woman into bondage. But you know, marriage to this day, you know, the man kind of holds the upper hand. And marriage as a whole, you know, once again, I'm not saying you can't be married. And if you're married, don't go out and get a divorce because you're watching this, you know. The main thing is there's a pure form of marriage where you can love somebody, you know, and I don't care whether it's two guys, two women, or a man and a woman, you know, like, I'm not going to get into the muckety-muck on that, but the most important thing is each individual, each man, each woman, be married to God first and foremost. And then if you are, the other stuff would work out on a carnal level, you know. But if your marriage is purely carnal, God's not in it, you don't think about God, and, you know, it's your marriage is just to be under the law, you know, then, you know, I think your focus now is not on heavenly things, you know, it's on earthly things, fleshly things. So, the point I was getting to is, you know, back in the beginning, the world was slightly different. Yeah, you know, I was just looking at in Galatians, you know, where it says, we are not born of the bondswoman. The bondwoman means to be bound, to burn, to be trodden down. The root word is doulos, a slave, which another root of it is deo, which is chains bound by the knot, you know. And, you know, even in Job, you know, he says, who can loose the bands of Orion? You know, I'm going to tell you what the bands of Orion are. You know, it's the ties that bind us to the carnal world. And marriage, in a lot of ways, is part of those, you know, ties and knots. And yet, you know, most of us, whether you believe in God or not, we all take marriage as being this holy thing, you know. But if you see the fullness of what marriage actually is, you know, there is a divine form of marriage, but it starts spiritually, you know. Now, final note. The straight and the narrow, preparing the way, preparing your mind, body, and spirit. It's like a wedding, you know. The abyss, you're walking down the aisle, you're at the altar, you get married right here, you cross over into the spiritual realm, the left and right hemispheres of the brain, and you burst through, and you crash the beach on the heavenly plane. But Armageddon, you know, kind of sounds like we're Armageddon my mind on, you know. But the battlefield is the minefield, you know. But, Moses, when he led the children of Israel out, bondage, it's not just marriage, it's marriage to the carnal world. So the cities, Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, those are the carnal religions, commercialism, and logic, the human logic. But we need to traverse it all. And Moses, when he led the children of Israel out, it was like he was walking them in unison, the chosen people, down the wedding aisle. And when they were in the wilderness, there was kind of like a group marriage, but it was like a shotgun marriage. If you read that, it was either in like Deuteronomy or Exodus, whatever. I'm not going to look it up, but God, when he came down on Mount Sinai, was this horrible storm cloud, a tempest, and the closer he came, the more they backed up and didn't want nothing to do with God. God scared the bejesus out of them, if that even was God. I think, they were not mentally prepared. They had not prepared the way, their minds, their body, and their spirits. And Moses kind of led them through this group marriage ceremony where he says, do you promise to worship God and only God and no other false idols? And they were like, oh yeah, whatever. But they were scared, like a shotgun was pointed right at their head. And, they had no sooner said they'd do all that stuff than they backslid and committed adultery with false gods, the golden calf, etc. So that's kind of a really bad wedding where it was a shotgun wedding in the middle of the wilderness, and in the end only a handful of people crossed over, a remnant of who started. Now the first individual that got spiritually married, in my opinion, was Jacob, when he wrestled the spirit, and then eventually he said, hey, if you'll feed me and clothe me and put a roof over my head, which is like a marriage vow, you'll be my God, and Jacob even then went on to have two carnal wives, Rachel and Leah. But I'll tell you what, he was married to God first and foremost, So that's my point, is, there is a form of marriage. If you're on this planet, that's how we reproduce, is we have sex with each other. And but marriage is more about rights, because you could reproduce with or without marriage, But marriage, if you love God, your relationship with whoever your partner is will reflect what your relationship with God is, because that's a perfect marriage. So that's kind of where we're at. The question is, do you understand what marriage is? Satan, the great duplicator, he's trying to duplicate the spiritual marriage, where he wants all of mankind to willingly wed him, because he'll give you the pot of gold, the precious stones, all the stuff that, look at all the money that's into the marriage industry, He's in control of all of that, whereas a marriage should have nothing to do with that. You shouldn't have to go in debt $50,000 on a marriage, A true sign of love is if you're marrying somebody, say, hey, forget about the diamond ring, forget about the big party, let's just get married. And if they're like, no, well, that shows where their mind is at. Now, Jacob, like I said, was the first guy to me that spiritually married back to God. Now, his brother Esau, he married Satan. And that's why God kind of said, I don't like Esau so much, because he was a carnal guy. And he gave away his inheritance. He saw no value in the spiritual inheritance. But, I'm not hating on Esau, because, when Jacob hooked up with him years later, Esau had mellowed out, said he had all he needed, and Jacob saw the face of God in him, mercy and compassion. Now, whether Esau was spiritually seeing the treasures above is kind of hard to say, because he could still be living, a lot of people, you could have a perfect carnal marriage. It's like, oh, look at that couple over there. They got 2 kids. They got a house with a white picket fence. The guy's got a great job. They play softball. They're doing everything right. They got a 401k. They're sending their kids to college. But you know what? If God isn't there, there's nothing good about that marriage, really, But, if they're loving one another, you know, I'm not trying to hate on marriage, you know, as a whole, but I just think the whole world is kind of shaped, and that's what's at play here, is there are those of us that are coming out of Babylon, out of Egypt. Why? Because we want to marry God. We want to be the bride of God and spiritually wed God, you know. And then, I'd say on the shadow side, it's the exact opposite. It's darkness trying to come through into earth and hoping that there's a Jezebelian bride. And that's a big lie too, because Satan tells the woman, you know, you will be my queen, but you know what? He doesn't make a queen out of anybody. He puts that woman into total bondage, you know, and it's reflected by, you know, the state of marriage to this very day, you know. So, I don't know if I got to everything. It's a long, complicated story, and I don't know all the answers. I wasn't alive 6,000 years ago. I'm alive now. I'm so glad to be alive, you know. I'm so glad to be just living. I pray to God every day. I say, thank you, God, for one more day on the planet. You know, all power, all glory, all goodness, all blessings come from you, you know. But there's some of us, you know, you can go to a justice of the peace, you know, get married, and go about your merry way, you know, eating and drinking and just living your life, you know, just being you, you know. Sounds simple, but, you know, it's a fine line. And the time is coming. You know, that's what's most important, is it's important to make straight the path, to prepare the way, which is all about your mind, body, and spirit. And marriage could be standing in your way, you know, if that's what's dominating your thoughts. You know, how am I gonna, you know, take care of my kids in the future? You know, I don't have a job. That's where, you know, each of us, you know, has our own path that we walk with God. But part of that path, you know, there's commonality. You know, that's the bride of Christ, where you put on his head. He's the husband. He makes the decisions. You willingly become his servant, you know, but you're free, you know. But you start living for God, and you put all your trust in him, and all your hope in him, and all your faith in him. And you know what? That's when the miracles start happening. And that's when mountains begin to move, my friends, you know. And that's kind of where we're at. The mountain is about ready to move. And the question is, you know, is your walk with God, are you at a point, you know, where you can see the truth? It's not just a mirage that's in front of your eyes. You know, a mirage is when the heat plays tricks with your eyes and bends the lights, and you see things that you think are there that aren't there. And that's what all I'm saying is, you know, take a good long look, you know, and, you know, if you're married, you don't have to get divorced. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying, have your mind right, you know, have it prepared. Know what's important. And above all else, you know, women, you know, I think that's part of the dark side. You know, women are equals of men, you know. They're not a lower species to be enslaved or to be put into bonds, you know, or to be tied up, enslaved, you know. And if you're walking with God, that's how you would treat a woman, with respect and dignity, you know. And their minds are as keen and as sharp as anybody else's, you know. But once again, look at a lot of the marriages out there, it's not how it goes down, you know. Women are talked down, you know, called biatches and hoes, you know. Excuse my French. But, you know, God, he's up there, and he knows all. He can see behind all the closed doors, you know. So there's nothing that's done in secret, you know. Even in a marriage, you know, you can't go behind the bedroom doors, you know. Whatever's behind there should be front and center with God too, you know. But anyway, you know, I think that's it for this Just Living series. You know I probably forgot some stuff, so when I review this video, I'll put whatever I think I missed in the About section comments to just kind of wrap this up. Alright, hey, God bless you all. This is Operation End Times. I'm your Jedi Warrior for Jesus, Ben Hellestead. Next up, MINDFAST. Alright, God bless y'all.